Good afternoon. Welcome to this panel debate for the local elections. We have three candidates here today. First of all, for the trade unionist and socialist coalition, Brent Cutler, who is here representing Sharon, who lives locally in the Bargate ward and is a local retail worker at a national chain. Recently, she was made redundant, and she has been an active supporter of the TUSC over the last 3 years and an anti-cuts campaigner opposing cuts to local services in the city. For the Liberal Democrats, unfortunately, our Lib Dem candidate for the Bargate ward, Derek Murray, has unfortunately had to rearrange work commitments, so cannot be able to attend. However, Councillor Maureen Turner is here on his behalf to represent for the Liberal Democrats. And for Labour, Matt Tucker. Matt Tucker lives just on the edge of the Polygon. He lives there with his partner and used to be a Southampton student and currently works over the past 4 years as an adjudicator for the property ombudsman. Okay, thank you all for coming. Unfortunately for a Tory candidate and the independent candidate, empty chair does, so we will move on. What we'll do is you have 2 minutes, starting from Matt, to give your opening speech.
Hi, my name's Matt. I'm the Labour candidate for the ward. One of the things we would like to do is to effectively improve the lives of students within the city centre. Actually, Bargate has the highest concentration of students, and what we'd like to do is actually using our experience and expertise is to actually improve the quality of private rented housing. We'd like to achieve that through a licensing scheme to make the landlords a lot more accountable for repairing their properties. And what we would also like to do is to actually ensure that the ward itself is a lot safer for students. Students play an important part of our economy, they're an important part of our community, and actually not only making them safe in the community while they're here, we'd actually like them to remain in the city and actually play a major part in actually shaping the future and our continued developing the city, and also actually bring their expertise which they've learned at Solent University and actually use that for the benefit of our city rather than others.
Okay, thank you. Maureen?
I'm Maureen Turner. I'm a ward councillor for Swaithling. I've been a teacher all my life, and my brief in the council is to talk on behalf of my party about education. So I'm particularly concerned about the welfare of students. We have another small university you may have heard of in our ward called Southampton, and we have a large number of students. We, as the last speaker said, we work to enhance the lives of students in our ward. We are looking for cooperation between neighbours, whether they're students or residents in the ward, and we're particularly asking the university to make sure that there is enough accommodation in the city for their students before they enlarge their student capacity. This is something that's particularly important for the rapport between students and residents in the city. And we're going to push that. There's a model called the Oxford model, in which they are linking the amount of residences available from HMOs to purpose-built university blocks for all the students that they've got. And we think that's a good model to go by. Swaithling is a very mixed ward. We have some areas where people have been out of work for 3 generations, and obviously that is something that we're particularly concerned with. We are very concerned about the fact that the EMA was dropped. I know that was done as part of the coalition, but it was not something that we intended or would have allowed if we could have prevented it. And we have set in motion more funding for less advantaged children to go on to do A-levels in the city and to take the place of the EMA. One area in which we've worked hard is to look at the welfare of children from poorer and less advantaged homes in school, starting from 2-year-olds, so that there is now funding for 2-year-olds to go to nursery school and to get the preparation for school which they so much need before they go into main school at the age of 4 and 5. There's a difference. Oh, sorry, it's gone on too much. Sorry.
And finally, Brent.
Thank you. Brent Cutler, Trade Union Socialist Coalition. First of all, I'll introduce myself by saying TUSC, the Trade Union Socialist Coalition, is the only party standing in these elections that is opposed to this current wave of austerity being brought about by this government, and actually to a certain extent with the complicity of the Labour Party. Now the question we will ask ourselves, and we will continue asking, is why should working people, why should students, why should pensioners pay for the failure, the mismanagement of this system, of the capitalist system we live under? That is the question we will ask, and that is what our campaign is about. As for the public spending cuts, as for the wave of austerity, how does it affect students? 20% of university graduates are currently unemployed, which I believe is actually significantly higher than the national average. Again, on the issue of students, we are told that this generation, your generation, is the first generation for some time to actually be, in many ways, worse off than their parents. Is there a solution? First of all, these cuts. The Labour Party, for example, argues for, I think in this city, £34 million worth of public spending cuts. How that can improve things for the lives of students is anybody's guess. These cuts, they're not inevitable, and they certainly are not necessary. They could be avoided by taxing the rich, or at least asking the rich to pay the taxes they have not paid. We stand on a platform that benefits working people, and that I include students, I include those recently graduated from university. A minimum wage of £8 an hour. The restoration of educational maintenance allowance, which the other main parties are not asking for. We call for investment in public services, which could alleviate the problems in this city and in this country nationally. Before I finish, I'd like to thank the Student Union for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure to talk to people, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brent. What we'll do is we'll move on to the first question. It's come up for at least 2 of the candidates, and I think it's a good place to start off with. And we start towards the earlier part of an educational life, especially when we concern ourselves with students and EMA. EMA and Aim Higher have now been removed from colleges and sixth forms, and what we'd like to know is, what do you believe is the option and the resolution to this situation, and how you plan to campaign on EMA or Aim Higher? And we'll start with Brent and we'll work our way back.
Well, as I stated just now, we would argue and demand the restoration of educational maintenance allowance. There are currently a large number of young people either not in education, not in training, not in employment, and we would insist that all young people on leaving school or college are given the opportunity for a job or proper training, such as an apprenticeship or a place to study, including university. There is an amazing, the other main parties talk about the need to cut, the need to balance the books. We will argue we would point out that every time, public spending is cut, there is another cost to that. There is a social cost to those public spending cuts. There is a social cost to the abolition of educational maintenance allowance. There is a social cost, which may affect some of you, I'm not sure, to the introduction of tuition fees. And so yes, we would oppose the abolition of educational maintenance allowance, and call for it to be reintroduced.
Thank you. Maureen?
I have every sympathy with what the last speaker has said. I don't think it's possible to get the EMA stated and EMA restarted under the present conditions. But what we have done is to make sure that each college has a bursary system to help people who are in particular need. And I believe that the city's bus service now offers, is this right, free bus tickets for students to help with the cost of getting to college. If it were possible to reinstate the EMA, then my party would seek to do it. But what we have done is to start at the other end, as I was saying, and look at children when they start out in life. And at 2 years old, children are at a disadvantage in some areas because they're not even learning to talk. And because of that, we have made available free nursery places to help not just the children, but their mums and the rest of the family to work with the children to improve their vocabulary and how they react with books, how they learn to count, so that when they get to school they have the best possible chance. And when they get to school, we have introduced the pupil premium that gives £550 to each school each year for every disadvantaged child, every child whose family is on free meals. And that means that extra staff can be employed to, which again is improving the job situation for learning assistants, to work with the children in school and to make sure they have the same advantage in life as children who come from, say, a middle-class home where books and talk are readily available. Obviously, we support the legislation that is coming into being, that everyone should stay at school until they're 18. But particularly in Southampton, as a councillor, my group will be working to ensure that proper provision is made within the city for every 18-year-old to continue their education or to get an apprenticeship. And again, the Lib Dems have set up an apprenticeship scheme which should enable more young people to go on to apprenticeships, which is sometimes better for them. My son-in-law left school at 18 and went straight into work, worked as an apprentice more or less for his first 5 or 6 years, till he was able to get the kind of job he wanted as an accountant. And in every area, it should be made possible for young people to go in, learn the trade, and to make their mark in the world by progressing up the career ladder, and at the very least to be in work, which is the most important thing for anyone in the present climate. It's important for them, and it's important for the country, because without increased productivity in the country, we cannot hope to improve our financial position and avoid a great many of these cuts.
Thank you, Maureen. And Matt?
Sure, yeah, I agree with part with both panel members in regard to the abolition of the EMA. In terms of individual local areas, in terms of reintroduction of EMA, Kent Livingston's made a pledge to introduce that in their local areas, and actually it's something that possibly the Labour group would be able to introduce if we have the money. Now, there are other ways of generating those funds to introduce things like EMA, but actually it depends on sort of smarter thinking about how we as councils raise money, and similar to as Maureen's been saying, we as a Labour group would want to encourage and sort of allocate funds to ensure that people, for example, can get to their place of education, and actually easing the burden, for example, of transport, to help to kind of supplement the burden that's been imposed on them by the cuts in EMA. It's not something that we can promise to deliver immediately, and I don't want, as a public to represent the Labour Party, to make unfairness of any kind. However, it is something that if we have the funds to do, we'd like to reintroduce and try and instigate some kind of Southampton-based EMA.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to sort of just briefly open up the panel to debate the issues. Everyone's had some form of different take on that, and if we allow Brent to go first, and we'll allow you to discuss the things you've just come out with.
Well, first of all, Maureen discussed the issue of care or funding for younger children, people at the other end of the scale. Well, one of the things this council has done is the closure of Sure Start centres, which did do a job, play a role, limited one may be, in actually assisting people in that age group. So, for example, something has already been taken away. If the Labour group, which is advocating £34 million worth of cuts, if you're going to do that, what your alternative appears to be is, instead of offering everyone a flat rate of money, such as educational maintenance allowance, you're offering those on lower income essentially some kind of means test. Now, I'm 40 odd. Now, I remember older people talking about the means test. That was something that existed in the 1930s, when if you were unemployed or on a low income, you had to convince people that you were in need of money. So what you're advocating is essentially a 1930s solution to a 21st century problem. Now, people say that those who advocate socialism is out of date, but you've just advocated effectively something that was attacked, incidentally, by the Labour Party 80 years ago. How do we improve things for students? I'm not one of those people who thinks you can solve a problem. It's not simply about throwing or giving money at everything, but the money is there. We are, I think, something like the 4th or 5th richest country in the world. I challenge anyone to say to me, we can't afford for people between the age of 16 and 21 a college education or a job or training. I challenge everyone to say the money is not there. The large companies, for example British Home Stores, or for example, do not have huge reserves of unpaid income tax. No one here is mentioning that. No one else. We are the only people that actually consistently oppose these cuts, and not just consistently oppose them from a purely opposition point of view. We are actually offering a solution. Yes, it is a radical solution, but it is possibly the only solution. We are offering the people of Southampton, those studying, including those studying the city, a real alternative to the austerity offered by the three main parties. Thank you.
Yes, and one or two points that I'd like to come back on. For a start, the Sure Start centres have not been closed.
One in my area was closed.
Right.
A number of Sure Start centres have been closed across the city and have been closed nationally.
But not in other areas. So that's not completely
Sure Start centres have
yeah.
Sure Start centres have some Sure Start centres been closed, yes or no?
I'm afraid I wasn't aware that any had. But that's my fault.
In your role as a councillor,
Yeah.
look into the Sure Start Centre at Wyndham Place. It's been closed.
Right.
It's been replaced by an employment agency, by the way.
Right. But certainly in my area, Sure Start services are still continuing. As to talking about means test, in a sense, everything we do is means tested. Our income is means tested to decide how much taxes we pay. If we're on benefits, they're judged by what our need is. The one bad thing about the EMA was that it went to everybody as a blanket gift, and some youngsters, some students coming in could spend the whole lot on HMV vouchers or going out for an evening's entertainment, whereas others were struggling to pay their bus fares. So that in itself was not fair. But the present position, of course, is even less fair to many students from poorer families, because they literally can't afford to go to college. And I've been told today that the figures for entry into college are 20% lower. And we shall be looking into that to see what more can be done in order to get these people into education. And the other thing is we may be a rich country, but we depend on employment, on work being done, and on stuff being sold, particularly abroad. That's what we've got to look at. We've got to improve the business position of this country so that we can afford what we want to do. And as to other countries, someone who was a Lib Dem member left when we joined the coalition and had to agree to tuition fees because her daughter was going to university, and she said, we are horrified, we are disgusted with what you've done. A year later, she's rejoined the party because she and her student daughter have found that she will be far better off under the present system, under the new system, when in many cases the fees won't have to be repaid at all. But those that proceed into higher paid jobs will pay the whole amount back and will be putting money back into the education system.
I think really the sort of the issue that we really need to focus on sort of is actually the impact on Southampton students. And I agree with Brent, there are obviously areas where we need to sort of address issues with tax and things like that, but that's a matter for the national government to deal with. On a local level, we as a party would like to ensure that more students remain in our city and study within our city and actually have the opportunity to do that. There are other ways that we can help do that, for example, with partnerships with Solent University, with colleges, and actually through, for example, helping with transport costs and things like that. And the difficulty we have in this particular instance is that the council has suffered quite a lot of government cuts. We have to deal with those, and as I said earlier, we need to find other smarter ways of raising funds to do that. There are lots of projects that we would like to do as a council. Obviously, we don't want to do those to the detriment of people who are in need. And what we would like to do is actually, like I say, to do what we can to support students in Southampton. But we can't make unfunded promises that we can't keep. That's the difficulty we have.
Well, I just mentioned smarter ways, more equal ways of raising funds. Taxing the rich, asking them to pay the tax that actually you and I and the majority of people here cannot avoid paying. Is that not a smarter way of raising money? Would that not be a smarter way of raising money which would benefit the people in Bargate Ward, benefit those students living in it, and yes, as you quite rightly point out, encourage those currently studying to stay in the area? Would that not be a smarter way of raising money, taxing those that have it? Now, Maureen mentioned, yes, to a certain extent, everything is means tested. Why am I the only person advocating that the wealthy, i.e. those that have the money, should be those that pay it? You see, at the end of the day, it's not the chairman of Marks and Spencer's that makes money. It's not the head of the NatWest Bank that makes money. It's those working for it. It's not the chairman of Ford's, which is in your ward, I understand, that makes money. It's the workers at the factory that make money. Those people, the working people, are the people that actually make the wealth of this country. So what we would advocate, I'm glad I've won you over on this, what we would advocate is that those are the people that have the wealth. I've come up with smarter ways of raising money, which incidentally might result in a majority of ordinary people even paying less tax. What do you think about that?
Well, as a national party, we've campaigned against the abolition of the higher rate of tax for sort of people earning over £150,000. And actually, we think that's wrong at this particular stage, because we feel that would have been a fair measure to keep. And actually, that would have generated enough funds for us to spend as a central government in local areas. But in terms of sort of dealing with other areas, I agree. We do need to deal with people who could could possibly afford to pay more tax, that's fine. But in terms of actually, and sort of talking about smarter ways of earning money, I'm sort of going back slightly on a local level, talking about how we as a council can raise funds. So there are other areas that we need to look at as well. So not just campaigning with issues of central government, but also in local areas too. So it's something that we need to obviously, whichever administration gets elected on May the 3rd, they'll have to go in and do an assessment of the finances and decide what is going to be achievable.
Well, taxing the rich is something we would all like to do, and distributing the money to those who need it. That goes without saying. But in fact, it is extraordinarily difficult to do because the rich find extraordinarily many ways of getting out of it. But what the Lib Dems in coalition have done is to make sure that there is now a tax on very big homes, so that someone who buys a £2 million house will now pay an extra 40,000 in tax. Bankers or other very well paid earners getting £150,000 or more a year will be £1,300 a year worse off. And a tycoon tax is in the offing to hit 10,000 of the richest people in Britain, which will make them £70,000 a year worse off. And in fact, it was the Tories who said, in fact, actually it was Mrs. Thatcher, we have to tax the poor, not the rich, because there are more of the poor. And that she put that in forward as a reasoned argument, which is why none of us here vote Tory. But it is not easy because of the way in which the rich hide their money to do it. But we are looking, as a coalition, Vince Cable, who has been this business minister, is looking at every opportunity to squeeze the rich and to make sure they're paying their share. And beyond that, I can't say. I mean, I can totally agree that the rich should be paying more, and we are looking at ways to make that happen.
Okay, sticking with finance, and I just want to come back to something that Matt brought up. With the change in local elections, there was a comment made about bin collections, going back to fortnightly bin collections and things like that. Given that we've just come out of a recent strike, I just want to see what people's take on this topic was and how people feel that bin collections and wasting public service jobs in that area should be taken forward. Right?
Well, cutting bin collections, I can't understand how that is going to help anybody working or living in the city. I mean, yes, we would like to see, see waste disposed of environmentally, but cutting the number of bin collections, if you're going to cut the number of times a bin is collected, surely that would actually cut the number of people needed to actually empty the bins. It's just a simple matter of mathematics. Now, we were the only party standing in this election that stood 100% behind the striking bin men. We stood 100% behind the striking bin men for their pay to be kept at the same level. Where I understand the Labour group offered, what was the Labour Party's line on the strike? Did you support it or oppose it? Or what was your line on it? Well, as I said, sorry.
No, carry on.
We actually stood 100% behind the striking bin men. We would oppose any reduction in a public service such as that, such as, refuse collection, because it makes life worse for people living in the city, for people living in this ward, and is obviously a prelude to cuts in jobs. Jobs of people who've already had their wages cut by this council. Sorry.
That's okay.
Right. This is all bound up to some extent with the terms and conditions row, in which the Tories attempted to or in fact it succeeded in putting different terms and conditions on people's employment, leading to cuts in employment, which we opposed as a party, and we would have had a pay freeze rather than a pay cut for people in running the services in the city. In fact, we actually warned Royston Smith of the trouble that he was going to cause by insisting on these terms and conditions, especially for social workers. And he decided, Royston Smith decided, that he would give an extra money to children's social workers and no extra money to adult social workers, who, although they work at the same desk, doing the same job. And this is the kind of thing that leads to strikes and unrest, because people see how unfair it is. Getting on to bins, which is what you asked me about in the first place, we would keep the present situation unless, of having weekly collections, unless it's possible to put into place a waste food collection every week, so that food could be taken away and composted or used to make energy if we had a suitable combustion plant. But that's the only circumstances in which we would go for any alteration in the recycling and refuse collection.
In regard to bins, the Labour Group has made a commitment to maintaining the weekly bin collections. We would like to review the refuse system with regard to expanding recycling and actually introducing the recycling of glass, which is overdue in my view. In regards to the terms and conditions and pay and strikes, actually no one wants to really go on strike, but actually what has happened with regard to the treatment of council employees really is extremely unfair. We as a group would like to introduce, are aiming to restore the pay and conditions, starting with the lowest paid and working up the pay scale. Obviously, the speed at which we're able to do that is dependent on finance again, but actually it's something we would like to restore, because actually council employees do a very good job, and we want to kind of ensure that council employees work for a city and work for an employer that they actually feel proud to work for. And actually, one of the untold costs of the terms and conditions is actually lots of council employees work and actually do extra work above and beyond based on invisible goodwill. And actually what has happened now with the treatment of employees in terms and conditions is that invisible goodwill is completely eroded, and that can't go on. We need people to be employed by the council. We want people to stay with the council and work for a responsible employer. And also, taking aside one of the other commitments that we have made is that there are going to be some instances. What we would like to do is to develop a model within the council to ensure that we actually have a facility whereby what we'd like to do is prevent job cuts. We'd like to avoid all job cuts if possible, but obviously there will be some people who still want still looking to see redundancy, for example, they want to retire. But what we would like to do is actually adopt a model that's actually been implemented in Sunderland, which means that for example, when a post becomes vacant, the person is still employed by the authority. So we use the funds that would be allocated for redundancy and allow those back into an internal training pool so that people can actually be redeployed. And actually, in some instances, in places like Sunderland, for example, the employees who've adapted and changed to and taken on a second job have actually found it suits their skills and attributes a lot better than the first one. So it does actually help people.
Okay, thank you. Great to see your rigorous writing, so I'll let you come back.
Yeah, firstly, the Sunderland model, which the Labour group are advocating, is actually mandatory under law anyway. Secondly, it's worth mentioning the issue of green technology in the business of waste disposal. If we're interested in generating wealth in this country, one of the ways it can be done is actually almost a second or I think third or fourth industrial revolution where green technology is properly utilised by the public sector for the benefit of the people who actually live in this country. That is one way that can actually generate huge amounts of wealth in an already wealthy country. Now, the question is of the Labour group. The Labour group in this city is currently advocating £34 million worth of cuts. If you're going to advocate that amount, if you're going to cut public spending, council spending by that amount, something's got to give. Somebody's job's got to go. Somebody's pay and conditions are going to suffer. Somebody's bin's not going to be emptied. At the end of the day, that £34 million worth of cuts will have a huge social cost, which all of us living in this ward and elsewhere across the city are going to have to pay for. As we've stated before, we are opposed to these public spending cuts, and we are offering a genuine alternative. There are alternative ways of raising money, imaginative ways of raising money. There are plenty of imaginative ways of actually generating wealth. The Labour candidate says he wants graduates, I guess, to stay in this city. We would like to actually utilise the talents of the young people who study at this university and elsewhere. But by somehow cutting their bin collections, by actually cutting council jobs, which people studying here are no longer able to apply for. If you're going to cut council jobs, surely there's less jobs for the likes of you to apply for. Therefore, you're less likely to stay in this city. Maureen raised the point of, money's got to be created somewhere. I've just advocated ways through which wealth, value could be generated in a socially useful way. Thank you.
Maureen?
Well, every year we have a budget which is set by the Tory administration at the moment. It may be set by somebody else next year. And the other two parties have to sit down and look at the budget, look at the spending that we have, and see where the cuts can be made. And as a group, we sit down and we look at the services that are cut, and we do our very best to alter things around so that services of different kinds, particularly for the vulnerable, are not cut. When it comes to it, there is a finite pot of money, and I would be really, really pleased if Brent is right and there are imaginative ways in which we can create wealth in the city.
I've just advocated them.
Well, yeah, but the ways that we actually could use, and I think no one will be more pleased than me, Brent, if this could happen, because it is so sad every year to have to look at amounts that can't be used for groups that need the money. Voluntary services are being cut. This is one of the worst things. And SARC, which is the Advice and Representation Centre, which does a wonderful job for people who are at the wit's end because their benefits have been cut. They've got to go to a tribunal. And that the money for SARC has been cut so that they're able to offer fewer interviews to people who need them. Other voluntary agencies have been cut, in spite of what Mr. Cameron says about the big society. Perhaps the big society only exists in the Cotswolds or somewhere. But we wish that more money was available, and if there's any way in which we could help to create money as a group, we will be doing it.
Yeah, sure. It's just sort of a point really I'd like to raise up in regards to sort of cuts and things like that. The budget that was put forward by Southampton Conservative-led Council, we did propose an amendment as a Labour group to use and save some of the money that was used, for example, on the VAT rebate, which the council received in regard to waste instead. and also to save some of the money that the council had earmarked for redundancy payments, to actually use those to save some of the jobs that were going to be cut, and actually some of the other funds that we were going to allocate was actually going to be spent into investing into the Shore Star centres. So actually there are some areas where we as parties can make individual choices, but I think at the end of the day what we do have to do is, whichever administration gets elected in May, they are going to have a long hard look at the books. And we will try our best as a group, if we were to be elected, to ensure that the cuts to jobs aren't made.
Okay, thank you all for your views and comments. Finally, could you sum up, especially for our viewers, in just 30 seconds why you believe that your party should be voted in the next local elections? We'll start with Brent.
Right, basically, we're different from the two main parties, the three main parties. We are offering an alternative to the austerity being offered by Labour, Tories and Liberal Democrats. We are asking those people what we are asking for nationally and globally to some extent is those people that create the wealth in society should share it. Inequality in this country has increased. The share of income in this country is increasing under this government and increased under the Labour government. We would like to see a massive reversal in both economic and political power in this country in favour of working people, students, pensioners, because those are the people that ultimately either create the wealth, have created the wealth, or will create the wealth. That is why I would argue for people to vote on May the 3rd for the Trade Union Socialist Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Corey.
I'm a Lib Dem because we're a democratic party. We meet together in conferences and as activists throughout the year, we form the policies that our party puts forward, and in a way that neither of the other parties do. And that's why we are representing the needs and the wishes of ordinary people in our city. And thank you for letting us take part this afternoon.
Thank you, Corey. And finally, Matt.
Sure, there are two straightforward reasons why I'd like people to vote for Labour, particularly in Bargate and across the city. We as a party want to promote a lot more fairness in the city. We as a group have the experience, expertise and willingness within the council, sort of in terms of the group, to actually implement a genuine alternative and a realistic alternative that can be delivered. As opposed to the Conservatives. The two main things we'd like to benefit for students specifically is the quality of private rented housing and to work to ensure they live in a lot safer environment. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you to all of you for coming down.